Good afternoon. This is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Shoe. The Right Shoe is a podcast about all things strange and unusual, especially when it references a death. And this one today is a doozy. This one is one that I had to chuckle because I went on to Reddit to try to get a better feel for what other people thought. And this case has been very widely covered. So I go on Reddit and the one person says, this is what happened. We all know what happens. I don't even know why people are still reading this. We all know what happened. And then there's 10,000 other answers to what may have happened. So apparently we still don't know what happened. And we're talking, of course, about the Diane Schuler Taconic Parkway Massacre, I guess you would call it, because 8 people sounds like a massacre to me. And we don't know, we should call it a syndrome, because whenever something in the medical industry is a mystery, it's a syndrome. So the business side of The Right Shoe is my therightshoepodcast.com is my website. If you listen to this podcast, you like this podcast, thank you very much. The listenership goes up and up, and I love it, love it, love it. Everybody's feedback is so wonderful. I sincerely mean that. I especially really get a good feel for my listeners on Instagram. I do have The Right Shoe, but it's connected with Shopaholic Dev 44. That is the Instagram page that I really use the most. On Twitter, I am Bookshopworm1. If this all sounds confusing, just put in therightshoepodcast.com. And is there any other Facebook? I'm just Deb. But that's a more personal one. I really don't do much. Sometimes I'll throw something out, but I'm mostly on Twitter and mostly Instagram. As always, the shout out to Murder at Bedtime with Lyndon. He's on YouTube. He will be so chuffed when I say this. And a shout out to Grizzly Books, Grizzly_Books, because she works hard, boy. I don't know too many people like her, but she has a lot going on. She really does work hard. Let's get right to the Diane Schuler Taconic Parkway. Is that how it's pronounced? Taconic Parkway. It's late and now everything sounds weird in my head, but I like doing it at night because then I don't have all this craziness outside. Taconic Parkway. It's going to drive me crazy. Taconic Parkway. That's it. Now, that's a parkway up in New York, and there was a tragedy that happened. The tragedy happened on, I think I had this, July 26, 2009. And what happened was so absolutely mysterious, so mind-bogglingly horrific that I don't think people could even cope with what happened. I know her family couldn't, because there was that famous movie called There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane. If you haven't seen it, which, wow, I thought it's just a very haunting documentary about Diane Schuler and what might have happened on that day. And, it was very much slammed because it was I will admit that the family was very much in denial. But there's, at that point when they filmed this, I think that family, for reasons that I'll get into, they were in denial, but I think it's because they truly were in denial. I don't think they were lying. I think they just couldn't handle what happened and were trying in their head to piece together what happened, and it just did not make sense. Okay, so Diane Schuler was born in 1973 to Warren and Eileen Hance. She grew up and she was the only daughter, and she was number 4. So that 3 brothers. From what I gather, her mother had taken off with a neighbor or her friends seemed to have argued a little bit about if it was a friend or if it was a next door neighbor. She ran off with somebody, leaving Diane alone. Basically alone, because she was a 9-year-old girl. So she lost her mother pretty much when she was 9 years old. And I mean lost because they never talked again. And it wasn't through the mother. The mother tried time and time again to reach out to Diane, but Diane didn't want anything to do with her. And we come to a point where mostly, yes, I watched the documentary and I got a lot of information from there, more of the psychology of her, the alcohol and the marijuana that was in her system. I went online for, and also there is Stephen King going to be wrapped up into this because he also plays a part in this in an indirect way. But Diane Schuler was the mother of that household. Growing up, it seemed as if she took over, she took charge of that household, and she grew up to be that way in life. To get a grasp of her psychology first, and I'm not sure if I should say what happened first. If you didn't know, what happened was July 26, 2009, Diane Schuler drove 1.7 miles in the northbound direction of the Taconic Parkway, going southbound in traffic for 1.7 miles until she hit a car. She was driving a Ford Windstar. She hit another vehicle and claimed the lives of 8 total people. Michael Bastardi, Guy Bastardi, Daniel Longo, and her 3 nieces, which is hard to stomach, Allison, Emma, and Kate, which were her brother and sister-in-law's children. So all 3 of their children were taken at once. And her daughter, Erin Schuler, who was 2. The only person that was to survive was her son, Brian, who was left with a lot of eye issues and issues in general. It was truly a tragic event. That's what happened ultimately that day. And then you have to backtrack. And that's why I mentioned, about the psychology, because you think, what happened? So automatically on this, on the show in particular, the documentary, and in life, I had seen the documentary first, but I would imagine when this first happened in 2009, there was press conferences everywhere, and her husband Danny and her sister-in-law Jay Schuler, who just does come off as such a doll. I mean, I actually listened to this other podcast and they said everybody needs a Jay in their life. And they're right. It's true. You do. She's that kind of girl that you want as your friend. She's nice, relaxed, laid back. Not in this instance. She looks stressed out of her mind, but she's just that kind of person you want around. So mostly it was those 2, and they had Dominic Barber, which he represented Joey Buttafuoco. I think he represented Jessica Hahn. It was always on the Howard Stern show. He had a lot of issues in his own life, but I think he was an okay lawyer. I know that he was a very famous lawyer for all that he was always in the spotlight. He told them, he said, I did not want them to go public, but they insist. So you have Jay and Danny very vocal that Diane would not, they immediately were just horrified, and they were like, Diane was the most level-headed. She took care of everything. There's no way, there's something wrong. And this was initially I watched so many shows about this, documentaries, old news clips, and there was one of Jackie Hant, who is the mother of the 3 girls that were killed at once. So in the beginning, they do show her defending Diane as well and saying, my sister-in-law, she was a good person. I can't understand how this happened. But then things started coming out. Her alcohol, her bloodstream, she was tested. The autopsy was done. Her blood alcohol level was 1.9. And her stomach, with the contents of her stomach added, it was in the range of, it was over 2, which is in the stupor / blackout range. One of the doctors that were talking about the levels of alcohol said that it was in the range, I think her name was Carol Weiss, the one who said this. It was in the range that people start going to the hospital. It was so high. This was very high, and her THC level was high. Now, that in itself, to have a THC level that high, that's like a chronic user. You just didn't smoke pot the night before and get that level. This is how it was written. Nanograms per milliliter. Okay, so she was at 113 nanograms per milliliter. So, wow, it must be high, because I'm seeing stuff like, this is what it says, 15 nanograms per milliliter is a strong indicator that a patient has used marijuana. She was at 113. That's high. I mean, her marijuana level was high. Let's put it that way. Her alcohol level was off the charts. So we have to have that in the back of our head. But her family, over and over and over again. Now, I know they were in strong denial, but even Jay, who seemed a little more honest, she said, yes, she smoked, but she wasn't a drinker. And it didn't seem like she was like her coworkers. They interviewed a ton of people. And they said that the coworkers, no, it didn't seem like she was this alcoholic, which would kind of make sense with what happened, or what I think happened, or what definitely happened. There's no disputing a fact. So they interviewed all these people. Now, there was a guy, Werner Spitz, who he was strict and to the point that, when the family went to see him, he said, look, she had a ton of alcohol in her system. That's why what happened. And they were like, no, something had to happen. Something went awry. And he said, yeah, she had a ton of alcohol in her system. And that was that with him. Then you get Dr. Harold Burston. His last name was spelled Burztaghan. He was from Harvard, and he was a forensic psychologist who would look over not only the autopsy, but he would talk to a bunch of her friends, a bunch of her family, and see what could be going on to cause her to psychologically go through this. You're talking about when she left the campground, the woman that owned the campground, Ann Scott from Hunter Lake, she said when she said goodbye to her, the kids were happy. They were all jumping in the car. No issues, no problems. And they were all in their car seats. And after the accident, they said none of them were in their car seats. So, so that's why the doctor went through and was seeing psychologically what could have been behind this happening. And he was more like sweeter than Werner Spitz. Werner Spitz was just having no time for that. And the way he said it much more eloquently, that she, something precipitated this event. This was a woman who she had taken care of her family her entire life. Then she marries somebody, and when they interviewed when they interviewed Danny, her husband's parents, they even said, Danny was her oldest son. Like, she was married to him, but she took care of him just like she did everybody else. You have somebody who was in control. The one thing that struck me was when the sister-in-law, Jay, says, oh my gosh, I was so happy when she asked me to be, she wanted her to be the godmother for the baby. And she said, oh, she really likes me. It just showed me, like, people really, really seem to kowtow and tiptoe around Diane. She really had a way about her, a strong sense of, I am the controller. I She had $100,000 job, $100,000 a year job. She didn't, they always said what she wanted, she got. They portrayed this woman who really was in control with and then you get to, she had all this weed in her system. So what happened? You get this image of this woman that was so in control, but then so out of control. What happened? And that was the baffling thing. And of course, everyone, they really were, she belongs in hell, alky. I never understand what good that does. I mean, I don't know. I can never see that point, but I guess, the 3 kids, man, that's ridiculous. And I know the Bastardi family was furious. They kept denying. The one thing that was a little frustrating was when they were asking about the marijuana, he kept saying, no, she never smoked. And then you go to Jay and she's like, well, she would smoke to go to sleep. I think if you are a little honest and own up to it or don't go on TV. It's one way or the other. You cannot go on TV and lie you just have to own it. But I think he was so freaked out by this happening because she was in control. She always did everything. She did everything for the family. She made little craft books in between making dinner and doing the laundry and getting the kids together. And she just had it going on. There was a few things that were a little red flaggy, like they interviewed her friends, and it really struck me. The one friend, they were all very protective of her, but the one friend did say she hadn't talked to her in like 10 years, and they said why, and she got upset, and she said she wasn't there for my child's birth. And I think it really hurt her because when Diane asked her to be in her wedding, she didn't go because she said basically she wasn't there for my child's birth. I couldn't be there for her when she got married. So there was a bit of, I think Diane grew up, was a very strong person. Then she finally found somebody she fell in love with. But after that, she seemed to really have a very, what do you call it? Like just a tunnel vision when it came to, she very much was in the moment and had to be in control of that moment. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts. It was Diane's way or the highway. That can get us to the point where, we have all these doctors evaluating or all these people talking about her, and then they go to the timeline. Now, the timeline is bizarre. It is bizarre. It just flat out is. At 9:30, they leave the campground. That morning, he said they woke up. They had coffee. 9:30, she's leaving the campground. She's waving goodbye to the owner. And Ann says they're strapped in their car seats. Everything's fine. 9:56, she pulls into a McDonald's in Liberty, New York. Everything's still fine. She's at the McDonald's on camera. The kids are playing. This was after the 1.9 alcohol came out and everyone was questioning about was she a drunk? What happened? And the McDonald's person that waited on her said, she was not drunk visibly and she was fine. She didn't appear frazzled or anything. She was straight up okay. So then they get to 10:46 and she stops at a Sunoco. Now she asked for pain meds, gel caps, which they didn't have Tylenol gel caps. So she leaves. And then that brings me to a point where they were going over her charts. The sister-in-law is surprised because she was apparently in a lot of tooth pain and she was always rubbing her jaw. So they questioned, could tooth pain cause some medical event? Of course, to which Werner Spitz said, absolutely not. There was 1.9 alcohol in her. He was just so forthright. So everyone said that in theory, something could have happened because of this tooth. But I'm thinking about the tooth thinking, it's weird that she never got it fixed, but she got hydrocodone for it. And I go back to, this was when hydrocodone and Percocet was being really given out quite heavy-handedly. Even OxyContin was, if you asked for it, you could get it. And And I think she never got it finished. I think she never finished with her. They never really finished fixing her tooth. And I truly believe it's because she could still go back, be in pain, and get that hydrocodone. Because a control freak, I'm telling you what, those opiates, that is the surest relaxation method, especially for a control freak. Just take my word for it. And I bet you she never got it totally fixed. She walked out during a root canal, apparently, or allegedly walked out during a root canal, not wanting to finish it. Why? Maybe because she didn't want it fixed. Maybe she kept wanting to get that opiate, prescribed to her. I know at one point there was dentists that would give people I knew anything they wanted. 90 Percocets, here, bang, no problem. I mean, not in today's world, but at that time, yes. So, I just have a feeling there was a lot going on. She harbored this resentment towards her mother. I mean, that was without question. She was always in control of things. And then as she was getting older, she had a lot on her plate. She had a family to take care of. She had a husband to take care of, that a nice guy, but didn't appear that he helped all that much. I mean, even when they left the campground, I know he only had the truck and he couldn't fit any kid. I mean, he couldn't take one kid. You took the dog. And I'm not, please, I am so non-judgmental. I do not judge. I'm just questioning why what happened. And, she had 5 kids in the car with her and she had to get somewhere. And for somebody who's always in control, she had to go from A to B to C. Something was, there was things happening that were prohibiting her from getting to a destination. And for somebody in control all the time, it was pissing her off because this started happening. They go to that Sunoco 1046. Then 10:58, she leaves the gas station. At 11:37, Emma calls her dad at work using Diane's phone. Conversation, she sounds a little upset at this point, but still okay. Then between 10:30 and 12, a red minivan is seen by several witnesses as driving aggressively. The one guy said that she was up on his bumper, beeping, swerving, moving from side to side. Some put it that she was moving from one lane to another, but with precision. It wasn't a sloppy move. It was deliberate, back and forth, but maniacally. But also, I mean, I drive to Trenton every day, and I'll tell you, that is nothing different than I see every single day. I'm doing 80 miles an hour, and people are beeping sometimes for me to get out of the way, and I'm like, I can't go any faster than 80. I just don't feel comfortable at that point, and people are flying past me. I don't get it, even when it's raining. So that's, I think, I don't know. That part still doesn't surprise me. But at 11:45, she was seen on Route 17, zigzagging in and out of traffic, but also she was pulling over to vomit. People saw her vomiting. And this happened a couple times. So then at 12:08, she calls, and she does call and talk to her for 2 minutes. But then this is when it starts getting sketchy. 12:13, she goes through a toll plaza. She again is seen driving erratically. 12:15 to 12:45, the red minivan is seen. It was a Windstar, and that was when it was back and forth with precision still, but alarmingly, they said that they were moving out of the way at this point because she was driving so erratically. 12:55, there was a wrong number called from her end. And at 12:58, she calls Jackie, and this is when she seems so-called out of it. Jackie said at this point, she did not seem like herself. She sounded like she was slurring. She wasn't making sense, which is totally out of character for her. So at 1:01, Warren answers, Warren Hance, okay, at 101, Warren Hance calls at home, calls back, and he tells Diane to pull over. Emma is upset at this point, but not crying, and he tells her to wait, but she doesn't. And this is when they find her phone later on, so-called neatly she put it on top of a concrete barrier and drives away. Warren calls, and there's several wrong phone calls made from the phone right before she left it at the concrete barrier. So was she drinking and trying to call and then got out of the car and left that phone on the barrier? This is when Warren runs out and tries to find her. He asks his daughter, "Where are you?" And she says, "All I can see is Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow." So he runs as fast as he can. He's in Long Island. He's racing to try to find Diane. This is when they said they don't know. Up until this point, her route was fine. They traced her, all the tolls and everything match what she normally would have taken. But then for some reason, she gets off of the Tappan Zee Bridge, lays that cell phone down, goes through back routes 61 miles away to get on the Taconic State Parkway, and to get onto an exit, to get onto a ramp the wrong way is hard to do. I mean, you have to deliberately, they make them a certain way so that your car doesn't feel right going that way. So she had to get onto that ramp, continue going on that ramp for 1.7 miles. And witnesses say, and there's several people that call during this time, and they're saying, look, this guy is doing 85 miles an hour. Some people called Diane a guy, by mistake, but this guy's going 85 miles an hour backwards on the Taconic State Parkway, just flying pin straight, not moving, not swerving, pin straight. Some motorists said she had a serene look on her face, which is highly disturbing. If you're drunk and you are flying down the freeway and you realize you're going the wrong way, even drunk, you would start to be flustered. You would start to shake. There would be, but they said she was pin straight, just driving like with a purpose and right down that parkway. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts. Diane was in control, and there she was flying. And it's like, you get this horrifying image, because when that crashed, she took out 3 guys. The pictures are everywhere. It was just devastating. I mean, the kids weren't in their car seats. What happened? What happened in that time? They're calling all morning, everything's okay, and then in a span of like a half hour, all hell broke loose, literally, in that van. And there was 1.9 alcohol level. That was her blood alcohol level. And then there was some in her stomach. They said she had 10 drinks inside her, with 6 of them there was 6 on top of the 10 in her stomach that hadn't even been digested yet. So that was also an absolute mystery as to the alcohol. Where'd the alcohol come from? It came from a bottle. Where'd the bottle come from? Danny says, I don't know. She packed the car. Now, it came out, they would bring this for drinks or whatever. But why would a woman with kids in the car drink from a bottle? It's so perplexing. And so when I first saw, and I hope that I'm doing the timeline justice, because it is confusing. She got into the car. Everything was fine. Then she's driving. Obviously, if she went into that Sunoco station, her tooth or something was bothering. Maybe they were drinking the night before and she had, had like a hangover, or something was bothering her. She stops for those gel tablets, can't get them. And then I have to say that one cat, let me see her name. I'm going to get her name right because she was excellent. Carol Weiss said said it perfectly. She's another psychiatrist. She said, was she trying to, and I can so see this, because she was always in control and she didn't want anyone to think less of her, was she taking sips of that drink really quickly so the kids wouldn't see her, trying to get rid of the pain, and then her alcohol levels shot up very fast. And then possibly, I believe she was trying to do what I do. And, you just cannot see this woman doing something like this. So she said, shot up her alcohol level very quickly and then maybe gave her a slight fever. I don't know if you get like this, but I do. Sometimes I will feel so hot and so warm so quickly. And when I'm driving, I get very woozy. But see, if I was to feel that way, I don't know, that happens to me more often now, but I'm not drinking when I do it. She was saying maybe she drank really fast, really quickly, gave herself maybe she even had a little fever from the pain that she was feeling. And then this precipitated a delirium. And, and then that caused her to drink more. And then that brought on what she called beyond intoxication. And that sounds like what she was going through with that pin straight driving. I'm getting home. She had been running late. There was a play that they had to get to. She was always used to doing everything so perfectly that maybe she did drink the alcohol very quickly. And then it started up her taking another quick drink. Maybe it was helping. And then she didn't want the kids to see her, but then it spiraled out of control. And for somebody that's in control all the time, it sounded like she was really out of control at this point. As I was going through all of these timelines and everything, and I was really getting into it, like, oh my God, I was really becoming quite in the rabbit hole with this, and I could not stop going over everything, who she was and what had happened to her as a child, and then her friends, the one crying, and then her husband and the sister-in-law so vehemently fighting for her. And then I asked homicide, and they sounded just like Werner Spitz. This was the exact quote. She was fucked up and she fucked up. And I was like, are you serious? That's what you think? And they were like, you're reading way too into it. She tried to get rid of the pain. She got drunk and she was high, and maybe she wasn't. And they said it did sound like, from what the family said on that show, that it seemed like, from what they read or what I've told them, that she wasn't a big drinker, but she did smoke pot a lot. It did seem like she smoked a lot. She probably smoked every night to go to sleep. Probably relaxed her. Whatever. The drinking she was not used to, and when she drank with that pot, it just, that was it. And that's what they think. They were like, and they always think so pragmatically. And I have to say, everyone involved in this case that went over the case, all the people that were emotionally vested, just could not accept that Diane had done this at all. It was just, that's why it was denial, denial, denial. But everybody who was thinking just with their heads, or everybody I know or listen to, that this is what they did all day, every day, they were just like, she was just drunk, and I guess that's why, the alky. And it's a mystery though, because you cannot imagine somebody like that doing that. And then you think, wow, to be like a perfect person, you can never fuck up, because when you do, it's bad. I just have to say that, because I really found this, my friend who writes to me back and forth quite frequently, and I very much value her opinion on things. She wrote this, and I thought she wrote this so, this was done so well. The way she wrote it, I was just about to say, I know what happened, and then she wrote this. And I thought, my God, how do you do it? This is what she wrote. I'm pretty sure that it was murder-suicide. Something made her snap, have a break from reality. I watched that documentary one night And I think she was blitzed out of her mind. She knew she was blitzed out of her mind. She had that awareness. When her niece Emma called her dad when they stopped at that bridge, Diane knew that she would be in trouble. If anything, that her brother and sister-in-law would never trust her again, and that it would get out that she was driving high and drunk with 5 small children. Diane couldn't handle the humiliation, the shame, the perceived weakness. She had always been in control. Her pride killed 4 beautiful children, including her 2-year-old daughter, 3 innocent men, and herself. Pride and ego. I think when the gig was up at that bridge, out of anger, she decided to end it. I don't think she wanted to up until that point. When her brother and sister-in-law heard her slurring and the kids crying, she knew she was toast. That was written so fantastically. I mean, I have to give a shout out. I hope Caroline doesn't mind me saying her name, but I just thought that was so excellently written. And then when I read that, it just changed my whole opinion again. I thought that sounds so logical. I mean, and that makes so much sense. And if she was half shot in the ass, yeah. I mean, yeah. For somebody that could never, how do you put it? For somebody who could never be looked upon as weak or not in control in any way, and to be shown to have lost control, yeah, maybe that's why when she was driving backwards, she had that serene look. Like maybe she had already gone over to the other side mentally and just like, that's it, I'm done. I mean, unfortunately, I can see that. I can see that all too well. I really was going to come on here and say, she was just screwed up. It was some sort of delirium brought on by alcohol. And then I read that. And now, at this moment in time, that's what I think. But this is why this is such a mystery, and it's such an unending mystery, because there is no ending and it never will make sense. Where does Stephen King fit into this? I'll tell you where. Stephen King is amazing. I will tell you that. I didn't realize, I did read this, but for some reason, I never put 2 and 2 together. As often, my brain, sometimes it's fried. I thought this was excellent. This is what Stephen King, master that he is, he wrote this short story called Herman Wouk is Still Alive. And it actually won the 2011 Best Short Fiction Bram Stoker Award. And I see why. I read this and I don't know. It's actually about the Diane Schuler case. It's actually based on the Diane Schuler case. I was looking for some answer to finish this. I wanted an answer. Then I started reading about how Stephen King had written. I had read it and I had forgotten about it, but when I read it, it is brilliant and it is so fitting for this episode. It's called Herman Wouk is Still Alive. Old friends Brenda, this is the synopsis, and this I got the synopsis off Wikipedia because it's so fitting for this podcast, so fitting for this episode, so fitting for the mystery of Diane Schuler. Old friends Brenda and Jasmine, along with their 7 children between them, set off on a road trip after Brenda wins $2,700 on a lottery. They reflect back on their harsh childhoods and disappointing lives. Meanwhile, Phil and Pauline, 2 aging poets and former lovers, are on their way to a poetry festival at the University of Maine. They stop at a rest area to have lunch together. Soon, Brenda decides that their lives are no longer worth living and that the children are doomed to a pitiful future. Deliberately and with the consent encouragement of Jasmine, she crashes the van into a tree near Phil and Pauline at high rate of speed. Phil and Pauline hurry to the wreckage, but Brenda and Jasmine, all the children, are dead. When a passerby asks Pauline what happened, she finally loses her culture disposition and asks him, what the fuck does it look like? And that is the last word on the Diane Schuler case. My next episodes will be delving into the Wonderland murders. They are unbelievable. There's a couple Philadelphia cases that I'm rolling around in my head. Marie No, she killed 10 children and never did any jail time. I was going to look into that. I'm not sure what the next episode will be. The next episode will be something in that realm. Or for Christmas, because it's Christmas, I might just do maybe just like a Merry Christmas, just to, for Christmas. But otherwise, it's just going to keep rolling on. 2021 will start season 2. I can't believe it's been almost a whole year that I've done The Right Show. So, with that being said, this is Debbie Q, and you're listening to The Right Show.